I once made a video called The Internet Tipping Point, in which I discussed how our society has slowly surrendered its mental and emotional resources to the web and prioritized our civic discourse through the lens of the online world. This has never been more true than in the rise of the social justice warrior movement on social media networks. But that's a topic that I've already covered in detail. What I want to discuss in this video is how smartphones have become a kind of psychological crutch and not only an antisocial epidemic, but also a source of cognitive impairment. In a new study by the Leicester de Montfort University, researchers discovered that the more times a person uses the internet on their smartphone, the more likely they are to suffer cognitive failures. These can range from a lack of awareness of their environment and people around them to forgetting why they went from one part of the house to another. Regardless of whether the smartphone user was surfing the web on their phone or not, the results of the study were largely the same. It's the constant distraction that seems to cause the mind to become unfocused and incapable of remaining present in the moment and concentrating on a single task for long periods. Dr. Lee Hadlington, author of the research, pointed out that people who have naturally poor attention spans are even more likely to become consumed by the enticing distractions to be found within their mobile devices. These distractions included checking emails, social networks, surfing the web, or playing games. It's the compulsive nature of smartphone usage that has turned smartphone users into addicts. I feel genuinely concerned when I step on public transport, a bus or train for example, and find that I'm the only person who isn't buried in a rectangular touchscreen device. The smartphone zombie apocalypse is all around you. Simply look outside, walk down the street, or observe people in social settings. We've become a society helplessly enraptured and completely dependent on smart devices. How many times have you witnessed this among your friends or family? You're engaged in a conversation together and you gradually witness their eyes wander slightly into a momentary daydream. I call this the "what is my phone doing now" effect. The conversation briefly pauses as they pull out their phone and check who's liked their latest Facebook update or some other such narcissism-based attention-seeking bullshit. Smartphones are often used as a means of social support or a way to make us seem less alone. Have you ever found yourself sitting alone in a staff canteen or in a cafe, surrounded by groups of people, and you've got no one to talk to? Once upon a time, when people found themselves in such situations, their choices were to either read a book or newspaper, stare out the window, people watch, or engage another human being in conversation. The latter options are now seen as much less desirable to smartphone users because observing others or striking up a conversation with a stranger in a social setting has sadly become less socially expected. The irony of people intentionally behaving less socially when alone in a crowd while occupying a social environment is not lost on me. The truth is, people just don't expect to be spoken to by strangers when their smartphones can keep them constantly connected to people they already know. Nowadays, the smartphone user can have their cake and eat it. They can slip out of the moment and communicate virtually with their friends and family at any time. This sounds great on paper, but it has the unfortunate side effect of shunning potential new interactions with new people in favor of prioritizing existing in-group relationships. In short, it makes it harder for people to make new friends. This can lead to a kind of social stagnation for the individual who is no longer forced to engage with new people, look them in the eye, and further develop their communications ability. The art of face-to-face human interaction is being lost. I was walking in the park recently and witnessed a man pushing his child in a stroller. The man wasn't listening to a word the child was saying because he was too busy pushing the stroller with his left hand while swiping mindlessly on his smartphone with the other. Here's something to think about. Prior to the invention of the smartphone, or even the mobile phone before that, what would this man be doing in that moment? He wouldn't have a small rectangular device to be staring down at. He would have to be fully present in the moment with his young son. Smartphones seemingly give us a place to hide from reality, as well as a place to indulge our egos online through social networks. What an irresistible combination for the human brain. Furthermore, in the time before the ubiquity of smartphones and tablet computers, no one was complaining that they didn't have a handheld computer screen to stare at and lose themselves in. People were happy to simply get on with their lives and be free to enjoy the moment as they pleased. Similarly, no one is complaining right now that humanity is missing the next piece of distracting antisocial technology to enslave our minds with. It hasn't been invented yet and therefore doesn't have power over us. Maybe we should learn to not be quite so quick to open the next Pandora's box, given how tough this smartphone habit is to kick. In a separate study conducted by the London School of Economics, it was revealed that banning smartphones in schools improves exam results. These findings really come as no surprise given what we know about cognitive impairment. The study sampled 4 schools in 4 English cities and discovered that the test scores of students improved by over 6% when smartphones were banned. The inequality between low-achieving and high-achieving students was also greatly reduced once the distracting force of smartphones was removed. The trouble is, most schools don't apply such restrictions on their students. How many parents closely regulate their children's smartphone usage? How many adults are even aware that they have smartphone addiction? We cannot resolve a problem if we cannot first recognize the problem exists in the first place. I don't genuinely believe that all addicted smartphone users care more about what happens online within the confines of their social networks than they do in the real world. It just appears that way. I think that given the egotistic nature of social networks like Facebook and Instagram, people want to present a certain perfect version of themselves and their lives that is unrealistically positive and perfect. They wish to use social networks to make their real lives appear more fulfilled, fun, and meaningful to those they connect with. This obviously seems vapid and shallow, but it merely highlights how deeply unhappy people are in today's society. They often must invent meaning by only showing the very best parts of their lives, uploading photos of the wonderful nights out, the holiday snaps, and the family celebrations. My personal belief is that the primary purpose of any regular social media user is to not just communicate with others, but to use the technology to help augment their personal lives and find a new level of personal meaning. The irony is that their excessive usage of their smartphone for social media purposes means they are in fact failing to do this because they are actually missing out on their own personal lives. This is because they are opting out of the present moment and pursuing shallow forms of communication with people who aren't physically in their immediate vicinity. They are oblivious to the world around them and more concerned with transient matters in virtual online environments. What happens to these online relationships that social networkers cultivate when their devices fail them or the online services they rely on go offline? How can we expect a generation of young people indoctrinated by heavy technology usage and unaccustomed to uninterrupted face-to-face communication to cope without the technology they've become enslaved to? The next generation may have to deal with a percentage of the population having to rediscover the art of conversation and relearn how to hold deep and meaningful face-to-face interactions.